Thank you, Nida, for starting the recording. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, namaste, assalamu alaikum. Just waiting for Shuman to join in and Prashani. And then I think we will start in a couple of more minutes. But meanwhile, when we wait, if there are any queries or questions after yesterday's session, please keep noting them down. We'll try and answer them as we go along, or we can route them directly to Anna as well.
And Dr. Sam, I just talked to Shuman Rahman. He's joining soon. He was in a wrong link, so I sent him the right one.
I'm sorry.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Assalamu alaikum, Shuman. Good afternoon.
I'm sorry, I was in the wrong link and I was wondering.
No worries, no worries. Glad to see you.
Same here too.
Hello, someone.
Hello, how are you?
I am very well. Looking forward to our training day today.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I found that today is my session, and actually, ethnography is what I did, but I don't teach it. So this is probably for the first time I'll be speaking on ethnography in general. So I'm also very excited.
Yeah, and Simon, I'm sure we will learn from your experience. So before I formally hand over the session to you, welcome everyone once again. Yesterday we had Dr. Anna Chimento cover some principles, basic principles around ethics. She also very kindly shared some links around the University of Liverpool ethics and the procedures and what to sort of be mindful of when you all submit your protocols for ethical clearance. And like I said yesterday, we have numerous opportunities to try and tease out any difficulties or any queries or any questions that you may have once you start proceeding with the process of ethics approval. She also covered one of the basic and important positions and perspectives in qualitative research, which was epistemological perspectives. She was trying to tease out the types of positionality that one has to keep and try and see how the knowledge is acquired, what the methodology and what the methods are. So day one finished, and now day two, we will continue to hear another very important perspective, which is ethnographic in qualitative research. And Shumon very kindly has had agreed to walk us through with that. And let's see how this works in terms of qualitative research, as well as how we benefit from this perspective when looking into more public health interventions and the kinds of work that we're embarking to take on. So once again, Shumon, thank you very much. Lovely to see you. Over to you. I will stop sharing the screen. And just for a reminder for everyone, the session today, as well as tomorrow and day after, will be recorded. So I hope you're fine with that. Over to you, Shuman.
Thank you, Dr. Siham, and thank you, everybody. It's a good afternoon here. So I hope you all are well in your time zones. So, well, I am to actually, share my experiences, I would rather say, about what I call as ethnography and how ethnography is important, what kind of research actually needs ethnography, more of these kind of issues, and particularly, well, I was reading some of the articles yesterday and this morning about, how ethnography is important in terms of mental health research, which I never explored earlier. So now I found it amazing, and I thought like I would share all those articles with you later on. But I took some of the important, insights from those articles and incorporated all those things in my slides. So I'll be sharing my slides, and in this lecture, I'll speak. I'll basically half of the time probably, and then actually I would like you to speak about issues that's being on the table, and then we'll see some videos which I found very useful actually. So probably the videos will speak a lot more than what we can speak. So let us work in this modality, and if you find it kind of not very interesting, just let me know. We can immediately change the modality. So that is it. So I'll share my screen right now, which is basically the, I think you're now able to see. So, okay. Ethnography is basically, as you know, I mean, I know that you know a lot about ethnography, but I assume that we know nothing about it, which is probably better. And then, starting from here, so your comments and remarks will automatically set me up that level where you are. Probably I'll not be able to comply, but nonetheless, we can share our experiences. So let us start from the scratch, actually. What is ethnography? So ethnography, just sharing my earlier experiences. When I got into the university for my graduation, so there was this admission test, and I got actually chances in the written exam in 3 disciplines. One was anthropology, second one was philosophy, third one was physics. And I choose philosophy over 2 of them. And the reason that I did not choose anthropology was that the subject was unknown to me. But the exam was a comprehensive exam, so and then they sorted it in different disciplines. So I got it kind of a lottery. But since I did not know it, I did not pick it up. But later on, I had to repent a lot because I found the subject very interesting. And ethnography is the core method of anthropology. The whole discipline of anthropology is embarked on the only method we call it ethnography. So nowadays anthropology is more diverse. They work on critical anthropology. You'll see that in many different Western universities, reflexive anthropology, critical discourse analysis, but they all are basically different versions of ethnography. So that is why it is better to start with a definition they call. I mean, this is one of the definitions you will find less dissatisfactory, I would say. So ethnography is a study of people in a naturally occurring settings or field by methods of data collection which capture the social meaning and ordinary activities, involving the researcher participating directly in the setting, if not also the activities, in order to collect data in a systematic manner. So what is important in this definition is that the first thing we need to understand that it is a study of people. And what is actually capsuled in these words is that it is an observational study. And you know the difference between observation and experiment. So in observation, we don't control anything. So that is why the next word comes, naturally occurring settings. So we observe in a setting where we don't have any control. And we even minimize our own presence, because our own presence sometimes can interfere. Because say, for example, you are a Western researcher, you're into a slum or in a village. So your presence will have an impact in the locality, so which might impact the quality of data. So that is why people often try to minimize their own identity in different ways, so that the naturally occurring setting of this particular field is not disrupted. So we'll come later to this point again. But here, so what they do actually, study of what? Study of social meaning and ordinary activities. That's the difference between ethnography and probably novel fiction. So fiction always gives you an ethnographical account of extraordinary activities. For example, Anna Karenina. Definitely it's an ethnography, but not on ordinary activities. It involves extraordinary activities, spectacular things that people get attracted to. So sometimes a good and fortunate ethnographies are also comes up with extraordinary accounts. If you read for example Franz Boas, Margaret Mead, or Borislav Malinowski, they are the classical ethnographers. They actually set up the whole idea of ethnography, and you'll find them very interesting because of the richness of data, or the natural occurrence of the events, which itself turns into kind of a spectacular ones. Sometimes people are not that lucky. You go to a village, spend 4 years, nothing happened. Only the relations. People go to the field, come back home, and the production is there. They go to the bazaar and come back. So sometimes you don't have many events to watch, to observe, but sometimes you have. So that depends. So sometimes ethnography presents you some spectacular activities, but these are not all. The basic meaning has been inbuilt in the ordinary activities, not with the spectacular or extraordinary things that happens once in a blue moon. So as ethnographer, we look at how people spend their day-to-day activities, most mundane things that they are doing, which doesn't have any kind of separate values. And sometimes you participate in their activities in different ways, because this is something that you observe, and you have to be a level of close in order to observe. So, and the levels will come to that later on. What level you would be closer to them, but definitely you are participating in a sense. You are participating. You go to a village. You are observing a hospital facility. So you go there. So you're participating, even though you're an observer. So your presence is being felt by your surroundings. That is how you're participating. Sometimes you're far more than that. You're a doctor. You go there and you are involved in in the practices. At the same time, you are also an ethnographer. So there are levels of participation. I will come to that later. But this is the whole idea of ethnography. It's a study of people. And then the people are in their own settings, which are naturally occurring. I mean, we are not interfering in their settings. And what they collect, an ethnographer, they collect social meaning of ordinary activities. So the meaning, I'll come to that later on too. The meaning that actually is not to be imposed by us, the ethnographers. Sometimes we analyze it, interpret it, but mostly we look at how the meaning has been generated by them. So, for example, one ordinary activity, go to the hospital for immunization. How this creates a meaning into the community. Is it a regular activity? Is it something they watch as a festival? Is it something they ridicule? So these are things that actually the meanings that you can collect from participating in their settings. And that is why ethnography is very important. So, I mean, this is what will elaborate what we said earlier, that, you know, when we need ethnography, in particular to capture social life, practices, and behaviors of our subjects. Because sometimes those cannot be captured through interviews, because interviews are rather fragmented. I'm interviewing a person, so I'm kind of separating him or her from the context. So he's telling a lot of things to me, but I'm not able to see that person in his own setting. So when we actually speak, we speak good things. When we do, we often do not do good things. So the difference is when I'm able to observe a person in his or her own setting, the person will be different than the person that is in front of me for giving interview. So that is why ethnography gives us this opportunity, which interview sometimes cannot give. As I said, to capture what people do, what people say, and what people say they do. Because sometimes what they say and what they do are different things. This is what interview cannot cover, because in interview, you will only be able to capture what they say. But what they say they do, but what they actually do might be different, which can only be retrievable if we have this kind of intervention, which we call ethnography. And sometimes we need to understand the whole society in general, or the organization in general. Because one person, so for example, we have this famous organization, BRAC. Probably BRAC has branches in many countries, including some of the South Asian countries too. So one person, one anthropologist, did an ethnography on BRAC. And they said, well, BRAC says that they are a participatory organization, but they are very authoritative, bureaucratic organization. That he found when he did the anthropological or ethnographic study. But you know, if you interview any of the BRAC personnel, the practices that actually you'll get from them is very much of, you know, bottom up. No one says, no one sir, it's always bhai. You know, he can Fazle Hassan Abed was the top executive of BRAC, so everybody says Fazle Hassan Abed is bhai, which is, you know, unimaginable in other similar kind of situations when you say your top boss is bhai. So Similarly, there are practices like this, which they'll say that it is very much egalitarian practice that we do when you interview them. But when you are an insider and participating in day-to-day activities, what this person did and came up with how things are generating meanings. And this person concludes that, well, BRAC is an authoritative, bureaucratic, and top-down organization, contrary to what it claims. So this was possible because he did an ethnography for an extended period of time. So time is also a matter which will come later on. So you want to understand a village, you want to understand an organization. Well, in some cases, I'll mostly be referring to the context of Bangladesh. Probably they'll be same in those of South Asia. So we have in Bangladesh, there are villages which are famous for conflicts, rivalries. So 2-3 villages, in a particular district, they have incidences of murder every year. Why this particular village has this, incidents, while the neighboring village is spending a peaceful life for years? So you need an ethnographer because this requires an intensive observation of social relations between people and history as well, which is also can be retrievable through this observation. So you need to understand context, how they make decision, behave, and relate to others. So, and that is why you need ethnography. So as we are doing, our research works, and we can easily relate why, because when you want to understand the perception of people towards mental health, so look at the second point. So sometimes what people say and what people do would be different. So when we interview them, they will say good things because they can read you. So you don't think that we are the only psychologist in the neighborhood. So people who are being interviewed, they're also studying you, what you are expecting. Sometimes they give you the answer in line of your expectation because they can read you very well. And that is why sometimes interviews are becoming a good thing, a feel-good movie, like a feel-good movie. So I expect this answer and the answer is given. So this kind of vicious cycle can be broken if you add some observation components with your interview and other qualitative methods. So, and as I said, you would be a participant, whether it's a village, whether it's a city, whether it's a organization, or actually ethnography started with Aboriginal or what they call primitive, communities, particularly, the communities in the Pacific, small islanders. So the first ethnographic accounts are written on them. And, for a long time, people believe that this is a kind of a study methodology which is or should be used to study these islanders or people outside. It's not in our culture. People, they're having different cultures, aboriginals, primitives. So ethnography is probably a method to study them. But now we know that ethnography can be used to study anything. For example, I read kind of an ethnography on, they call it therapeutic geographies, actually. So therapeutic geographies is a term coined by some global health researchers, and they define it in a way that the geographic reorganization of healthcare within and across borders under conditions of war. So under war condition, how the healthcare system has been changed within and across the border. So this kind of condition has been termed as changing therapeutic geographies. And they used ethnography to understand that. Particularly, for example, study that study was on Iraq and Syria border, and they said how, you know, the militarization of healthcare happened over time, you know, in Iraq and in Syria. So this is something which actually gives a very rich detail in ethnography. In interview, it might not have given that much richer, you know, account. So these are issues that actually we often do in public health, because public health, the word public makes ethnography viable as a method. Now, when you are an observer, how much close would you be with your setting? There are 4 different positions actually offered. You can be a complete observer. You're there, so you're not in the setting. You are probably just looking at the railway station from afar, or you're just an observer. You're nobody there, just an observer. You go to the station, but not as a passenger. So you're just an observer. You take notes. So you're a complete observer. So, and then the following terms are basically gradually intensifies your level of participation. So it would be, oh sorry, there is a mistake. The second one would be observer as participant. So meaning you are more observer, less participant. You can assume a kind of a situation like this, where you are more of an observer, less of a participant. The third position is participant as observer. You're more of a participant, less of an observer. So our business is observation. So how much intensive observer would we be? That is the actually that are the positions to offer. The utmost position is complete participant. So one, probably the finest example of a complete participant, I found it in a Sri Lankan study by Ratnapala. He studied the beggars of Colombo. The book probably is available in Colombo, but not in Dhaka. But I just read a kind of a summary of the book, which I found amazing, because that professor of sociology, Ratnapala, was a professor of sociology of University of Sri Lanka at that time. He literally begged in the streets of Colombo for 6 months to undertake this study. And he caught tuberculosis for 2 times, I guess, or 1 time, I forgot. And then many other health complications that he had to undergo for this, position, which he called complete participant. And interestingly, his wife was not very approved of this, research activity. And she came up with, foods in different baskets and offered him. Well, as a kind of as a visitor or as a benevolent giver. And then later on, he actually asked his wife not to give this kind of foods very often because it creates kind of a suspicion among his community. Why this much of food are, coming to you every now and then? Who are you? Because he's a new person, and when he is there are a lot of foods coming. So, and he asked his wife not to come again. Anyway, the study was well, as I read the abstract and a summary, kind of a little bit elaborated summary. It's pretty detailed. So this is what a complete participant do, but sometimes you cannot be a complete participant, understandably, because sometimes this is an absurd position. You want to do an ethnography of a war. How can you be a complete participant? So, well, I remember I was doing a slum study. So I went there with my notebook thrice a week, I guess. So, but one particular week I was absent for a week, I guess. The whole week I was not there. So next week I went there. And there I found a very different scenario because, well, meanwhile, my rapport has been built with them. So every time I'm there, I've been greeted by them and I take tea with them, have a tiny chat. So this is how my observation starts every day. But this day, I was not greeted. People I know that, but they just pretend that they don't know me. And they were after something. They have a look like a blank look, a kind of terrified. People are kind of going from this place to that place. They're hurrying after something. I don't know. So then I actually stopped someone and said, well, what happened? Why are not you talking to me? He said, you don't know what happened? I said, no. He said, actually some hoodlums attacked the slum, and as a result, well, these slum people are not revolutionary. You'll find them very timid and compromising all over the world. Actually, they do some sort of drug business sometimes, but this is also something which is probably we'll talk later about it. I mean, it's fabricated. They are not directly involved in drug business. They are forced into it, but they're overall very law-abiding in a sense, publicly, and timid personalities. They don't protest except very few situations. This was one of the situations because the hoodlums was trying to rape one of their guards publicly, which they couldn't probably tolerate. And they attacked some of the hoodlums and beat them up severely, which they do not do actually. That was a completely shocking, surprising for those people, those Mastans. And later on, the Mastans barricaded the whole slum from all over, and everybody coming out from the slum got beaten up. But when I went into the slum, nobody actually challenged me, so I did not know anything. Probably if they alarmed me earlier, probably I did not go there. But as I'm in the slum and people there has been a rumor in the slum that they're coming, then they're going to attack now. And everybody has a stick, bamboo stick, or kind of a knife, or some sort of local weapons at their hands. And I am bearing my diaries and pens, and I'm running with them. And they said, why don't you hold a stick at your hand? Do you think that they will spare you when they come? I thought, like, yes, probably so, because when they come and they attack, I'll not be spared. And they said, hold the stick, and just when they come, attack on them. And that's the moment I can remember that I became a complete participant. I had to hold the stick and like a slum dweller for an hour or so. And later on, actually, I called one of my journalist friends who came with police forces and pacifies the situation. But I mean, for us researchers, the most expected position could be participant as observer, because you have to participate to a great extent in order to get richer data. But definitely you have to maintain a distance at the same time, which we call critical distancing. If you become them, then it is probably, sometimes it doesn't work. So sometimes the difference works better. Sometimes the difference doesn't work. So this is something to be decided by you. What kind of difference do you maintain? That depends on the nature of research, nature of settings, and your capacity and your time. So these are the deciding factors for you to determine your level of participation. Am I audible or am I making sense? I'm just afraid. Any comments?
You're absolutely audible, and you're making perfect sense, Shimon.
Suman, yes, I'm also enjoying listening to you. And one thing which I realize, ethnographic have to be very patient when they are making the observation. And that is also reflected in your presentation. You are doing it at a very slow pace and letting people absorb what you are saying.
Thank you. Thank you. Prasansa.
Hi, Suman. Just wondering about the consent. So when we go for ethnographic study, do we let the people know that we are studying them? Like, how does it work?
That's a fantastic question. I'll answer it in the course of my lecture. You'll get it sooner. Thank you very much for your question. We'll be discussing that. So Pragya.
This is not a question, but like while you are sharing this ethnography, I just it reminds me of a metaphor where a bee circulate around the flower, and it doesn't do any harm to flower, but it takes what it needs and go back. So for me, the bee is ethnographer. Just it reminds me of the bee.
Well, that's a fantastic metaphor, I guess. That's a fantastic metaphor. Yes, you just go to the flower, go as much close as you can, and collect the honey, and then leave the flower. And this is also a kind of a critic against ethnography. Thank you for raising this metaphor, because sometimes people criticize. It's not only ethnographers, in a sense, all researchers, particularly qualitative researchers, that they come and sometimes they actually circulates a kind of a false optimism, because when you do research, you are actually generating kind of a false hope, even though you are not speaking of it, and then you go away, and the setting remains the same. So this is kind of a pessimism I often hear from my respondents when I did ethnography. So, well, that's a different issue, but it reminds me of that as well. But your metaphor is fantastic. Thank you very much.
Prasansa has her hand raised.
I think
Perhaps again.
Prasansa,
Any queries, questions, Prasansa, from your side?
Sorry, that was from the,
okay,
from earlier.
okay, no problem. So I'll play a YouTube video right now, which is basically a graphical presentation of ethnography. Some of the component we covered and some of it is not covered. So I would appreciate if you just, can identify the issues that we covered and the issues that you need further elaboration. So I'll just play.
Simone, before you play the video, you'll have to go in the Zoom settings and pick
Okay.
enable audio. Yesterday, Anna was, she also showed a clip and we couldn't hear the audio. So you need to go in the settings.
Settings. Okay. Excuse me.
Audio
Where is the
settings.
set? Where is the settings?
You can find it in two places. Click near the mic where you mute yourself or unmute yourself. So there will be a menu which opens up. So there's audio settings in it.
Mute my audio. Edit. Okay. Stop video. Virtual filter. Video filter.
No, that's no, that ain't the place. I think where.
You need to stop sharing your slides first, and then when you share your tab, then this window will come up. Over there, you can click the active audio box.
Okay, so I have to I have to
Unshare
stop.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I have gone. I have. Okay. Yes. So now I have to go to the settings. So again, what is the settings? Sorry.
If you click the share screen, then there'll be a window pop up. And
yes.
On your left.
Share sound.
Left,
right.
yes,
Got it. Thank you very much. Yes. Okay. So now I'm sharing my slides again. I guess from here on I can do that. So probably you will now listen to it.
My job is to make college easy.
Is the sound
because
coming?
Students have
Yes,
a lot.
it's coming.
Fantastic.
This is the seminar presentation for qualitative research. This week, we are going to discuss ethnography. In our text,
But Simone, we can't see the video. We can hear the audio, but we can't seem to see the video.
You can't see the video, right?
We can't see the video.
So probably I have to go to the original YouTube and share it again.
Perhaps, yes.
Right, right. Okay, give me a second. New share. Yes. Are you able to see it now?
This type of research intention for qualitative research.
Yes, we can
This
now.
week we are going to discuss ethnography. In our text, ethnography is described as writing culture. Another description, which I like, is portrait of the people. This type of research entails participation either as an observer, interviewer, and/or participant observer to gain an understanding of how people's lives are realized in their world. Ethnographic research seeks to understand on a deep level how people's reality makes sense to them and has a meaning in their lived setting. This is accomplished by interviewing, observing, and recording people's lives and activities in their natural setting. Because the ethnographer is expected to deliver a descriptive narrative about a group's context and activities, long-term or longitudinal studies of events and activities are not unusual. These events and activities may be specific to a religious group, a family, a political setting, or economic life. The participants are in their natural setting and observations are made, recorded, analyzed, and cited. Ethnographers may also use content analysis to study various types of documents as well as cultural artifacts to grasp historical context. A debate exists about whether or not objectivity is possible in an ethnographic study as well as qualitative research in general. Thus, an ethnography can be said to be an interpretive perspective. There are three types of bias which might get in the way of an accurate accounting. First is the sampling bias, which means the sample population is skewed or non-representative. This bias might happen because the informants might not be generalizable to any setting. Further, the field location must be a microcosm of a larger view. What happens in one place may not be happening everywhere. And the last factor in a sampling bias is time. Longitudinal studies generally work best in an ethnographic consideration because time can create its own bias. The second bias, which might limit objectivity, is theoretical bias. This type of bias comes about because of preconceived notions that the researcher has at the outset, and informants or locations may be selected because they are consistent with the already supposed outcome. The third bias is that of a personal nature. As researchers, our personalities, cultural orientations, social status, and political ideations can color how we perceive what we are studying. To set up our research, selecting your location should be carefully considered as to its viability of access. Establish key informants who are significant to and help ease entry. These informants provide critical information. Know that certain researcher traits such as age, gender, social class, and racial ethnic background can enhance or inhibit access. Understand who your gatekeepers are and build relationships which will be invaluable. Formal gatekeepers provide formal permission to enter the setting for the purpose of research. Informal gatekeepers can provide entry because of their position or influence over the setting. Your ability to move away from outsider status is critical, so building relationships is important. What roles might a researcher play in order to participate? There are varying degrees of participation. First is that of complete observer. The complete observer's identity is hidden and makes observations of and in the setting, being careful not to interrupt the natural flow of what is happening. Sometimes recording the activity with a hidden camera or a one-way mirror to avoid detection. The next role is participant as observer. In this role, the researcher's identity is known. The role of researcher is limited because their open identity makes the participant subject to changes in behavior. As researchers' roles gain depth of function, the next part one could play is the observer as participant. The researcher's identity is known and is also a part of any activities. Some distance is created, which would minimize the researcher's impact on the setting or the people and/or situation being studied. The last type of participation is the complete participant, who actively engages in the setting. If this is the type of researcher on board with the research, care must be taken to not cloud their perception of the activities. Evaluating data will require an organized outlook of how the data is recorded and assessed. The data is recorded in field notes, and opinions abound about methods for doing this, because keeping notes on research is most likely personalized to the researcher. On-the-fly notes are phrases and words which will help the researcher to remember events or ideas occurring while making observations. Thick descriptions are exacting descriptions that include all of the senses a researcher needs to recall such matters as words said, things smelled, and visuals for accuracy of depiction. Data analysis, interpretation, and theories are a linking between on-the-fly and thick descriptions, the interpretive aspect of one's quick notes combined with thick descriptions. The researcher personalizes and reflectively examines his or her own responses to include emotions about what is being researched. And finally, the accounting or summary provides a look at what research has discovered and what the researcher surmises is its meaning. We have defined ethnography and discussed its place in research. Next, we look at different biases. We talked about setting up the research, types of participation, and finally, ways to assess, interpret, and document data.
I'm just holding this final, version of the picture for a bit to see the whole dynamics of how an ethnographic activity is done pictorially. So, well, as I said, this video actually contains some of the important issues that we already discussed and some of the issues that we did not discuss. So, and can we have this kind of idea that the issues which are not discussed but very important found in this video?
I think the issues of bias, yeah, progress.
Issues of biasness. So what are the issues, biasness that this video mentions?
There is one sampling bias. Probably we will find some samples who are not truly representative of the community. So observing them may not lead to the real picture.
Right. Sampling bias is one, because you may choose one village because it's convenient to you. So for example, Nabi, you're choosing a slum, Karail, right, for your study. Why? Because Karail has a lot more convenience, and Karail has a kind of a healthcare infrastructure already built. Although you try to kind of balance it with a comparative, with providing a comparative picture by choosing another slum which is relatively less established. But in most cases, we see people are doing slum studies. When they come to Bangladesh, they do it in Karail. So people has a Karail bias. So, well, there are biases which Robert Chambers says 7 biases of doing development studies. The one is season bias, one is project bias. So there are a lot of biases. So season bias, what do you mean by season bias? Because when you work with the communities, particularly for NGOs or donor agencies, you'll see a lot of researchers, overseas researchers coming into the locality when this is a good season, particularly in the winter. So such a season bias. So they will not be able to understand the misery of the community when there was there has been the worst kind of climate that they face. So project bias means, well, particularly you look at the problem within a project. So your samples are coming from a project. They're already structured, already informed. So you interview them or you observe them and you see, oh, everything is going all right. For example, you are doing a research on non-formal education, and you are doing this with a non-formal education program of a nationally renowned NGO. So you're using their intervention sites as your research, sampling site. So what would happen? You will see only the best examples. So your research will be biased. So this particular video mentions other kind of biases as well. One is theoretical bias. You might be, biased by theories of miseries, theories of a lot of, because there has been Orientalism, around you. So and many developmentalists take the missionary approach when they come to, this part of the world, right? The other day, actually, I was talking to one of the researchers who is working on a Bangladeshi project, actually, as a team leader, and who was trying to get my opinion on media. And he said, you know what? Which one is the most popular television in Bangladesh? I said, yeah, it's Bangladesh television, the state one. You are wrong. You're wrong. I said, how? He said, there has been a study. And the study says that the most popular television is the Samoy television, which is a private channel. I said, how was the study done? He said, the study was done by random telephone interview. Then I said, okay, that means in order to get eligible for your study, participant has to have a telephone, right? And do you know how many villages do we have in our country? It is almost 80,000. And half of the village houses have televisions, and none of them has cable TV, because the cable TV did not reach there. It's a very urban phenomenon. So it's only, limited to the cities. So none of the private cable TVs could reach up that level, which the much, criticized the government's, representative Bangladesh television can reach. So sometimes this kind of biases work with our, development partners. So, and another bias is, which also the example would be, very relevant to the bias of the researcher's personal nature. I think Prasansa can see the bee in the picture. You see the bee here. So the personal nature of a researcher is also determines the outcome. If you have a predetermined notion of the community that you're researching into, definitely it would have impact on your research. So anything else? Anything else that yeah,
I
please.
observed in the video, they was said that time can also be a bias.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
not not fully, I don't fully understand how can that that bias. Any examples or any elaboration that you can provide to me?
Thank you, Dr. Siham. Time is really important because I said, I just said that, if you go to a slum during the winter, it would look much beautiful than if you go to it during summers.
Understood, yeah.
So now if you choose winter to do an ethnography of Islam, then probably will come up a very different data than you do it in summer. So that's why time is a very, very an important factor in order, and that's why actually they always prefer, and classical ethnographies are ethnographies of years. So for example, Margaret Mead did her ethnographic study on the islanders of Samoa for 13 years. Borisław Malinowski did his ethnography for in different slots, but it's almost 20 years. So these are the range of time. Actually, to become more objective, they expand the time actually into the slum so that they can cover everything. So time, that's why time was a very important thing. Thanks for your point, Siham.
Thank you for that explanation. And
And
this
probably-
kind of this also
Sorry.
reminds me, yesterday Anna was covering the positionality aspect, when as a researcher you come from a particular background and you're also picking on that. So for example, the interpretation bias. So if I have pre-formed notions, or because I come from a place of my own sort of experiences, educational background, etc. So I have so what she was referring to in a diagram was identity mosaic. So my age will have its own sort of influence. My educational background will also have some influence. The kinds of experiences, etc., will interact, because that's part of my identity. And when I look at even ethnographically, anthropologically, or even epidemiologically, so there will always be certain things that I will see, which will have some bearings from the place which my set of identities, which will be interacting with the data. And this should be kept as objective as possible, or as informed as possible, that this might be not exactly a bias, but a place from where I am getting informed whenever I pick up interpretation. So I thought that I'll slip that yesterday's talk in, because this is also relevant with the point that Anna was making.
Yes, it's actually, I'm really sorry that I had to miss this session. It was definitely the epistemological, discussion is very important before coming to ethnography. You have to settle yourself. Your positionality is very important. So who are you? Number one. So I would rather tell stories about, to solve this problem, because I said that I'm a field researcher, so I prefer stories to tell. So I did an ethnography of a television talk show, which actually involved, three-wheeler drivers, rickshaw pullers, van pullers. So it was a music competition of three-wheeler people. So which was broadcast in a private television channel, and its name was Teen Chakar Taroka. So it's in Bangla. In English, it will be three-wheeler star. So now I did an ethnography in this program. So what I did as an ethnographer, I watched the program on television, but that's not ethnography. That's a part of ethnography. What I did, I went inside the program. I participated with the participants during their auditions, during their green room, staying period, during their grooming sessions. And I talked to the producer, I talked to the participants every different time. And when it was broadcasted in the slums, because most of the participants were coming from slums. So I also went to the slum and observed and watched the show with the slum dwellers. So, you know what happened when the producer introduced me with the participants, and this he said, here is Mr. Shuman Rahman. He will be with you, with us for a longer time, and he's a teacher and a researcher. So the researcher, actually, no, not teacher, researcher. That was the term that she introduced, and soon they translated the term researcher, which they do not understand, as a journalist. So they often call me, "Hey, journalist bhai, hey, Shangbadik bhai, journalist brother, hey, journalist brother, coming." So, and soon they found me as the only unsuccessful journalist they have ever met. Why? Because I spend hours and hours with them, talk to them, go with them in different settings, and none of my reports were published. While they see a lot of journalists coming to them when they became celebrities, when the show was matured, a lot of journalists coming to them, spend just 5 minutes, and colorful news has been published in TVs or in newspapers, and the news is broadcasting on TVs, but they just spend 5 to 20 minutes. And I'm spending 8 hours a day, none of my things are published. And at one point they said, "Brother, you're like us, urban poor. So we are struggling with our luck, and you are also struggling with your luck," because they read that I'm an unsuccessful journalist. So they tried to, console me up and just encourage me in my business. They said, "Just keep swimming. Sometimes it happens, and you'll be doing good in future." So at one point, and I also talked about ethics. At one point, it came to my mind that, well, are they being cheated? Because I'm not a journalist, number one. So it's a false identity that actually is in operation. So now I talked to the producer. When I heard the term first, I talked to the producer that they're calling me journalist, but I'm not a journalist. What to do? And she said, "Well, they will not understand the word researcher. It will be an unnecessary, complicated thing. So rather stay with this identity, journalist. What's the problem?" I said, "I don't have any problem, but it's not me that it's their interpretation. So in that way, it's ethical that I did not introduce myself as a journalist, but they interpreted me, but the term researcher for journalist. So it's their interpretation. So I should not be liable for that." So this is how I actually got out from the ethical dilemma that I had. And actually I had to write it when I actually defend my thesis. So it was part of my PhD thesis. So, I mean, researchers' identity is also definitely a huge issue. So can we go back to our slides and we can talk about more of it? So now, so number one is before going to identity. So I think this is also very important. That, what should we observe? We are often talking about observe, observe, observe. Now, what to observe? In the definition, we talked about, we observe ordinary social activities, ordinary meanings. So how to actually make it tangible, this ordinary thing? So here is some attempts. So you can observe the space. So if you go to a particular place to do your ethnography, it can be a slum, it can be a shrine, it can be a shopping mall, it can be a haunted house, whatever. So the place has a certain feature which is very important, which sometimes is very determining. Even sometimes the space determines the whole community. For example, Ajmer Sharif, or any famous Hindu temple you go to. So you'll see that the space itself defines the community. So, and this is basically a situation which is to be explored through a different method, as suggested by Lefebvre, a French phenomenologist. He called it rhythm analysis. So rhythm analysis and ethnographies are twins for Lefebvre. He says that when the space is becoming more influential than the people, then you have to actually do some sort of architectural observation, which is not just observing people. Probably the space needs more attention from you. So you need a different method, which he actually outlined in his book. The method is called rhythm analysis. So how the space and people are interacting in a given time period. So that's a different discussion, but just it came in the context. Space is very important. Where are we? And who are the people involved? Am I doing an ethnography on the Idul Adha, probably the sacrifice of animals in Idul Adha? So how this particular event happened in a particular village you want to observe. So the whole event, from the ritual and then the distribution and everything, the whole day. So who are the people involved? And then what activities they're doing? What kind of activities are being conducted under your research objectives? That's very important. So you have to have your research objectives in mind. Sometimes, in ethnography, unlike quantitative studies or the studies, those have hypotheses. In ethnography, you don't have any hypothesis. Rather, they say that in quantitative studies, your hypothesis is tested, right? So whether your hypothesis is justified or null, you have a hypothesis that okay, people tend to hide their mental illness. This is a hypothesis, and you go for a survey and you test it, and it comes out justified because most of the cases you found that they hide it. But in qualitative studies in general and ethnography in particular, your hypothesis is to be generated from the data, which actually shapes up in a form of a grounded theory, which I will come later. But the idea, the assumption, you come to the field with what the Latin word tabula rasa says, with an open and free mind, like a white slate. You don't have anything, as Anna was discussing yesterday, that so you have to have this kind of understanding before. What are your position as a researcher? What are your biases and prejudices? So for example, you want to do a research on Islamic fundamentalism, for example, and you yourself is a very Western secular person, then probably you have to deal with very carefully, because for a Western secular person, lot of things would appear as Islamic foundation fundamentalism, because they have a very particular definition of it. Probably many other people would differ to that definition. So that is why it is very important to understand your own mindset and your own biases and your own prejudices, because there are people you probably favor, there are people that you don't favor. So when you go to a field, you have to be very aware of that. So, and when you are in a settings, you'll see activities, you'll see objects, and most importantly, you'll see interactions of people, which is the crux of ethnography, which probably you will not be able to see in other methods except FGDs. But in FGDs, it is also, kind of a selective interactions that you'll see. So you choose people and you see their interactions, but the natural interactions of human themselves, human with nature, human with architecture, that is something only ethnography can offer you. And thus these interactions are really, really very important. And timing is very, very important. So what activities are taking place at which time? Is it the same time the same activity happens, or has it been a kind of a shift of timing? And then actually goals of people, I mean, the activities that people undertaking, which goal they're trying to accomplish? What is their objective of undertaking a particular activity? And again, most importantly, emotion and feeling, which other methods probably would not provide you, in richer details. Emotions and feelings by you subjects and yourself as well, because you are also part of the whole setting. You are traveling into a kind of a setting, so your particular feelings are very important, as well as your subject's feeling expressed by you, to you. So these are the things that you'll observe meticulously, regularly, with a kind of a religiosity. You have to keep observing. You can't skip. This is why it is being compared with classical novels. When you read Tolstoy, for example, you'll see greater meticulous details of everything. So you'll understand that nothing has been able to escape the eyes of the author. So is the ethnographer. You'll see everything that is under your research objective. So now I'll just have a kind of a brush up of the whole method, from its beginning to end, and I'll discuss the issues of access and identities in the process. So the questions that was asked by Prasunsa, so it will be answered in that way. And research site is very important. That is what I'll talk about. But before that, I think it would be better if we just watch another video of 3 persons, 3 professors doing ethnography in 3 different sites. So it's a fantastic video. I mean, I'd love to share this video with you. So this is probably it's not in YouTube. I'll have to share it from my hard drive. Give me a second.
The word fieldwork is an interesting word to use to describe what it is that the word field.
Okay.
Fieldwork is an interesting
Is it
word
visible
to
and
use
audible?
to describe what it is that anthropologists do, because it's a
Yes,
term that's
loud and
borrowed
clear.
from the natural sciences, and it's meant to contrast with lab work.
Mostly it's a lot of talking, it's observing conversations that people are having.
Not only as anthropologists do we talk to people and ask them what they think, but we do things with them, alongside them. So it's about connecting aspects of social life and cultural life that people don't automatically connect. I think that's what anthropology does.
It's a process of trying to gather information where you realize things are not always apparent, and it's only by kind of being there as much as is possible on a regular basis that you can sometimes get a glimpse into people's inner lives.
Okay, I'm coming to visit you all.
I'm doing field work at a Haitian social service organization that has historically served Haitian refugees and immigrants in the greater Boston area. I thought it was a very interesting site to think about in terms of questions that came up in the research that I had done in Haiti. How is it that communities of Haitians who were able to leave Haiti were able to reestablish new lives in another country, learn to negotiate a whole new system, a whole new culture, new language. So I'm trying to see, what does it mean to be an American? What does it mean to be a citizen? What does it mean to be an American for those who are coming from abroad here?
We're in Londonderry, Vermont, to study the culture and economy of farmstead and artisan cheesemaking in the United States. One thing that I'm interested in looking at is how people learn how to make cheese. And some people have made cheese in their kitchens for years. Others have this idea that they're going to go into business and they take courses and they read books and sort of approach it more formally. So do you have a working definition of what makes an artisan cheese an artisan cheese?
I don't. I think as long as you've got a cheesemaker using his or her hands in the process and using their senses to determine when to move on to the next step, it's artisan. And I can't really define it any better than that.
So it's an interesting place to look at expertise because its expert knowledge is not a guarantee that you're going to make a good cheese.
We put it in at around 9:45.
You know, some people measure temperature and they're very fastidious and they only do go to the next step when the pH is at exactly the right point. And other people just say, okay, it's ready.
You know, not all cheesemakers are good at math. Their eyes drift off, you know, when you start to talk numbers.
And so you've taken cellular material or genetic material from the life in that swath of ocean and you've brought it here.
Absolutely.
So what happens when you bring it here? To do field work among scientists and among the marine biologists that I worked with in particular entailed engaging with their everyday practice, which meant doing things in the laboratory with them, doing things at sea. So I went on a number of research cruises with them to answer particular questions, ecological questions. I was able to dive in the research submersible Alvin, which is a small 7-foot in diameter titanium bubble. I want to know, in this moment of environmental crisis, global warming, what the ocean looks like to the scientists who describe it. So I'm looking at the practice of the production of authoritative knowledge about, in this case, the ocean world.
What do you think has been some of the challenges in trying to get adequate health information to the people that you serve?
The people, unfortunately, who are being left out are those undocumented, because you need to have proof of citizenship.
One of the things that is a constant theme in this building, of this program, is questions of citizenship. Citizenship education, knowledge about law, knowledge about rights, all of those are central themes to security.
Let's say, for example, you have all this. You call sick, they still pay you. He calls in sick and they don't pay him. What is it that you have that he doesn't have? Benefit? Yeah, yeah.
It's been interesting to see what is it like for people who are living in those kind of gray spaces of illegality in a way. I think anthropologists today, many of them are looking at questions of law, questions of health, questions of relations of power between the sexes. Those are all ethical and moral questions. Would you say there's a lot of discrimination, you know, that we're against Haitians or against immigrants or against who? So in many ways, anthropologists can shed light on dimensions of human experience that are not readily apparent.
We participate, we observe, we watch, we use our own subjective and first-hand experience. Here it is.
The bambino, as the Italians call it, the baby cheese.
So when I'm helping make cheese, that's participant observation, which is an important part of fieldwork. I don't think I could have really gotten how physical the work is until I sterilized 20 milk cans, which are very heavy and they have to be sterilized incredibly carefully. You're really, really invested and concerned and curious to the point that you want to experience it yourself. And then it helps you to ask better questions, more informed questions.
So in some interesting ways, the transformation of lab techniques and the coming online of genomics and bioinformatics has changed the way that you shuttle back and forth between lab and field? Would you say that that's true?
I would say that that's absolutely true too.
Mm-hmm.
I think the view of a lot of us now is that it's this iterative cycle almost.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you make some observations, and this is how it's always worked actually.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go back to the field, to the ocean, to test your predictions from those observations.
I think the surprising thing for me in doing anthropological fieldwork among marine biologists was how similar our questions were about fieldwork itself. How is it that you do extended research in the field and come up with a story about what it is you're trying to describe that's at all representative? So oceanography and ethnography both share the conundrum of how to represent the world.
In a very real sense, despite our abilities to sense, you know, molecules, you know, indirectly, or our ability to sense the ocean from space, actually going out on ships is, in my opinion, going to continue to remain important.
Goodbye, Atlantis. Yeah, we're under.
What fieldwork allows, in my view, is a way to see what's not generally on the surface. It's a very demanding process, but it's for me very rewarding to be able to work with people and for them to trust you enough to allow you into their lives. I think that's kind of the most fruitful part for me.
Okay, so here we watch a short description of 3 different anthropological researches which were done by obviously ethnography. And I guess we have some sort of insights from those tiny videos. So you're free to share your opinions or takeaways from those videos if you want to share these with us. Anybody? Do you think that they have any differences in exploring their ethnographic questions or their level of participations? Do you think that they are the same, or the insights that they gather from their fieldworks? Anything that touched you?
I'll start and then let's see what others, because I'm constantly thinking of how this particular methodology comes to my help if I am doing a particular kind of work. So public mental health or developing interventions or working very closely with the health systems, even communities from where, so for example, in Dhaka, we'd eventually be interested who will be these peers who can either work voluntarily or can work for a stipend or even some form of payment for their time that they spend. So, so I'm constantly thinking about that kind of a perspective. So I find this ethnographic approach very interesting. It gives you a very deep insider's view. But I also find that it's quite challenging. I'm not sure what kinds of questions, the kinds of questions that I was just posing, can I use ethnographic approach, say, understanding how the program works? How will I integrate my intervention or my program of interventions within an existing system? So how can I utilize this kind of an approach? So I'm just thinking. I'm just it's just a comment, or I'm just putting putting forth how to absorb all of this and how to sort of extrapolate it into my kind of work that I do. So I thought I'll just share my sort of challenge or my thinking.
No, fantastic observations, I guess. And this is an excellent question, because many people think that ethnography is something which is kind of has a limited use in research. We might not be able to do a lot of things with ethnography, which is probably a kind of a dated notion. So that is why the contemporary ethnographies are basically, doing a lot of things, and they because one problem with ethnography was its lengthiness. You have to stay to the field for an extended period of time. So this is a kind of scary for many researchers who don't have time. And that is why they come with ideas like focused ethnography. So focused ethnography gives you a very particular focus. So classical ethnography, what classical ethnography do? We have a broader, research objective, not very specific research questions. So with the broader objective, we will go to the field and we'll find what kind of research question we should ask. So this is what this particular, the lady in the middle who was doing research on the artisan cheese making, she actually mentioned that actually fieldwork actually enables her to ask informed question, both as a research question, both as interview and investigative questions. Because sometimes we design interview guides without actually thinking that whether the guide will work or not. And for us, the only option is, in other methods, the only option is to do a pilot. So the pilot can actually give us the idea whether the question is working or not. So think about this. This is a very tiny, period that we spend in determining the knowledge material that we prepared to get, the community understandable by us. There's a very tiny period of time that we spend to design the knowledge material. But ethnography, as a complete method, it gives you, because your preliminary observations will shape up your queries. And then you will gradually go into the queries, and then you will be able to get the answers. So asking the right kind of question is very important. So, but of course, focused ethnography doesn't do that. Focused ethnography is we have the question already in mind. So, and we don't have time. We have only 1 week to go. So let us do this kind of an ethnography for a week, or for even for several hours, who knows. So I have a particular question. I'll look at the setting in light of this question only. So that is called focused ethnography. And during this pandemic period, we had another ethnographic method, which is basically, they call it proxy ethnography. So I did kind of a proxy ethnography as well. So since we could not, go to the setting during this, pandemic, so we hired some of the people, good observers from the setting, and we remotely teach them how to observe and what to observe. So basically we borrowed their eyes and power of observation, and we try to look at the slum. So this is another way of doing ethnography. And then again, in the virtual world, so because many of our activities are being transferred to the virtual world, and that is why this particular method comes, nethnography, when you are observing people's social media activities. So observing someone's social media activity, for example, how Mahmoud Nabi or Mr. Siyam Sikandar is tweeting, for example, over a period of a month. So that gives me an idea of his content, his timing, his political position, his biases and prejudices, and a lot of things. So this can be done through another method, which is ethnography, but we call it nethnography. So internet ethnography. So this is how ethnography has been adapted, for different settings, for different, So I'll share at least 2 articles, which first of which actually a kind of I would say it would have been a systematic review, but it was not, because the articles chosen was not following any particular method, but they choose a lot of articles. I think more than 8 or 10 articles on mental health ethnographies, and they actually came up with how ethnography is useful in exploring mental health issues. So I'll share this article with you later, so which will be revealing. Since I'm not a mental health expert, so I'll limit myself into ethnography thing. So let me close this. So there are other issues discussed in this video. So for example, the scientific research, ethnography versus oceanography, he made a very insightful remark that when you have the power of observation, so the eyes of ethnographer and oceanographer shares many commonalities, even though they are working in different disciplines. Doesn't matter. So one is hardcore marine science, another one is reflexive anthropological studies, but they are sharing the same observation, same data. So these are things that ethnography can provide us with. So I'm closing this, and I'm also sharing my lecture again. Okay.
And while you do that, Shmoon, if you want to take a comfort break, let's check with other fellows as well if they want to quickly grab something to drink, visit the, So
I think this is a time, I guess everybody is probably get exhausted with my repetitive blabbering. So let us take a small break.
Sure.
Maybe how many minutes, Sihan?
We can take a 10-minute break.
10 minutes break, fine. So after 10 minutes, we'll come back and finish the rest of it.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, once back. Just let Shamoon know by raising your hand that you're back. Then we will continue. So we're just waiting for Prasansa, Krishani, and Navi to be back, and then we will resume. So Krishani is back. So just waiting for Navi and Prasansa. We're back, Shmoon. So over to you.
Thank you. Hope you have a refreshing break. So
just got myself a refill of my coffee. So over to you.
Okay. So I had an electricity cut off, so I was busy, with the backup. So if it doesn't come again, so that I can continue.
No worries.
So
no worries.
I did not have a break at all actually, but electricity came back. But I'm okay. So now, just this part of the lecture is basically to provide sort of a practical, going through to the whole method, how ethnography actually is being done when you are in the field. So the first thing is, defining a research problem. That's the very, the first thing that, what is the problem? You want to study a village for the mental health perception, right? So you want to study Islam to see whether how they perceive mental health issues, whether it's a disease or something else. So this is the problem. So the problem needs to be defined and shaped very concisely. And in order to do that, because sometimes we have something in mind, but it might not work. The problem that we want to explore in the field, probably when we are in the field, the problem, our understanding of the problem has changed by the data that we get from the field. So that is why a preliminary observation is very important. So spend a few hours of days, primarily before shaping up your own research problem. Because ethnography, when you do ethnography, classical ethnography, then actually it is the setting which determines your research, not the other way around. So the way they do ethnography in classical period, and as I said, now we are actually we are doing ethnography in many different ways. We often do not follow this method, but a classical ethnographic method is you go to the field with a tabula rasa, with an open mind, open heart, and go there and find your research problem from the field. In our cases, we do not do that. We don't have that time actually. So when we do ethnography, we might have, the longest ethnography you could imagine nowadays is 1 year ethnography, not more than that. Even though, if you can do it for your PhD, you can afford that. Otherwise, it's a much smaller ethnography. That's why we call it focused ethnography. We call it, proxy ethnography, so on and so forth. So it's a quicker one. So for this quicker one, we have a research problem defined. But the research problem you define for yourself, probably when you are in the field, you'll see a lot of other contributions. So you have to reorder your questions, or you have to add variables, or you have to delete variables from your questions. It might happen. So that is why today ethnographers go to the field with some notions, not absolutely free as it was in the classical period, with some preconceived ideas, but they are aware of these ideas. So, and again, you should have a limited number of questions in a single ethnography. So you should have a limited number of questions in your ethnography. You can't deal with a lot of questions, a lot of issues, So that is why it is important to understand that which problem I should explore in the ethnographic exploration. So research problem is very important. In our cases, our research question is actually performing the research problem, but sometimes it's different. Sometimes one part of your research question can be explored through ethnography. The other part probably you need other methods for. So this is something that you should think first. Which is the problem that you need ethnography for? The second thing is, okay, I have the problem fixed now. So what do I do it? Which is my field site? Now, choosing the field site is very important, probably the most important thing, because it can give you the representation. Sometimes your entire ethnography can be ignored by your supervisor or your editor or publisher, that this field is not very important. When actually I started showing interest in Islam studies, I was in National University of Singapore, and one of the sociology professors says, Shumon, please no more Islam studies. We have enough of it. So, and then I thought, like, if I just repeat, all those Islam studies, maybe in Bangladesh, it would be kind of a novelty. But if it is a kind of a very, easy thing, very often found thing in Southeast Asian literature, then probably I don't have any future. So why he's saying so? And then I found that yes, there are a lot of Islam studies in South and Southeast Asia, focusing on poverty, nutrition, social organization, conflicts, so on and so forth. So then I thought, like, well, he's a sociology professor. He thought, well, I'll focus any of those issues, and that's why he thought, like, Islam studies are already, outdated. You should do something else. But Islam can be interesting for many other things as well. So I then actually I did Islam study, but it is not Islam study per se. I worked on the production and consumption of a particular kind of music in an urban slum of Dhaka city. So it's basically music studies, but slum was the site. Why slum was the site? I had an explanation. So I had to carefully choose my site because not all the sites have equal music performances. So I have to choose, and it cannot be chosen while I'm home or while I'm abroad. I would just go, have using Google Maps and found the slum on the map and pick up, okay, this one and that one from the map. No, that will go absolutely wrong in 90% of cases. So that is why, and again, people often think, okay, you do slum study, go to, if you're Indian, go to Dharavi, because this is the largest Asian slum or the largest slum in the world. You do in Pakistan, then go to Karachi slum. This is the largest one in Pakistan and one of the largest in Asia. In Bangladesh, go to Karail because it's the largest in Bangladesh. But the largest of the best might not be best for you. That's the very important thing. Don't pick up as your field site the best one. No. The best one might not be best for you because the best one has a lot of other dimensions. You might be distracted by other variables, other factors. So you have to pick up sites which are best to observe, not the best sites themselves. Which one is the best site to observe? See, your observation is actually coming first. Which one is the best for me to observe? It might not be the best one in the country, doesn't matter. You want to have a study in the of a shopping mall. The best shopping mall might not be a best solution for you. It might not provide best answers for your research questions. So that is why choosing a field site is very tricky. Now, as soon as you just choose your field site, the question comes then how to get the access to the field site, because sometimes your field sites are open access. For example, a shopping mall is open access. Anybody can go. But probably a village is not, that open access, because even though it's not entirely closed, but a small village always, notice strangers. Why this person is here? Who are you? Where are you from? Why are you here? These are the questions you often ask, and people will not, talk to you if these questions are not solved. So, and there are more private settings, like in a school can be a hospital is a very private setting. How can you get access to this private setting? Like slum is a private setting in many senses, because you can't, use the resources of slums, or you can't navigate yourself in the slum sometimes without external help. So you need to have gatekeepers. So I did my fieldwork at Karail, and when Karail is a slum, and it's the biggest slum in Bangladesh, I would say. So it's a town actually. Now, when I choose Karail, contrary to this wisdom that I'm sharing right now, I choose it actually quite whimsically. Okay, I'll do it at Karail because everybody is going to Karail. Fortunately, it worked for me, but it would not have worked for me as well. Now, when I was first time in Karail, I was at the sea. I mean, no direction, where to go. It's so big. So it was very opposite to my idea of a tiny slum where I can go anywhere. So it's big. So even if you ask about a location of any place in the slum to any person belonging to the slum, in most cases you will hear the answer no, they don't know it. It's such big. So this is really a problem. And then I found that, okay, I can't navigate myself into the slum, and I don't know, I'm not able to create any rapport with people. Okay, I use tea stalls, drink some teas, have tiny chats, but it's so big, and they can't, and many people actually, and another factor is that many such unknown people are coming to the slum for research purpose, for marketing purpose, so many people, so they're used to it. So this is another problem. Even though it's a closed setting, but it acts like an open setting. So in those cases, you need a gatekeeper. So in my case, what I did, I found that there is an NGO branch in the slum. So I went there and I found a slum dweller actually in the office, and I had a chat with him, and he actually gave me the address of the main office, which is located outside the slum. So I went there the following day, and actually they introduced me with some gatekeepers who are the slum dwellers. And the rest of my field work was just easy. At one point, I got rid of the gatekeepers. You have to, in terms of getting quality data, because gatekeepers will always influence your data collection procedure. You will see, no, not this way. We talk to him, or just let's go to there. So you want to have a go around, right? So they think like, okay, you need to be shown the best part of the slum or the setting. So they'll take you to the beautiful places, not to the places that you need. So that is why you have to get rid of them at one point when you have enough rapport built with other people in your setting. But the gatekeepers are very important when you are in a private setting, particularly. However big or small it is, you need to have gatekeepers. Otherwise, you will not be able to build trust among the respondents and people around you. For open and public setting, you don't need a gatekeeper, because you know the setting, or nobody's gonna challenge you to why you are here or so. So it's available, you can have your own access there. But the question is, that question will answer what Prasansa was asking. Would it be would you be appearing as a researcher as you are, or would you take another identity? That depends on your research question as well, actually. Sometimes your own identity might be a problem. Might be a problem for respondents, might be a problem for your own research as well. So you might have to take a kind of an identity which is not you. That will be determined by your research question, but it has to be cleared by your ethical review. It has to be mentioned in your ethical review. I know that Anna covered this. So you have to mention it in your methodology, which will be cleared by the ethical review committee, because your this identity, covert identity, as you said, So you have to make sure that your covert identity would not create any harm to the respondent. So it should not be accounted or termed as an act of cheating. So it has to be sure and cleared by them. And sometimes you have to actually use your own identity, and there is no problem using your own identity. As I said, in my case, what happened? So I was introduced with my own identity as a researcher, but the term was unknown to them, and they translated and interpreted it in their own ways and made it journalist. So, well, at one point I feel kind of an ethical compulsion, but well, when I talked to my the producer of the program, he said, okay, you're not responsible for that. You already mentioned your identity, and if they call you a journalist, what's the harm? So it worked in that way. So it's neither covert, not very overt. This is kind of a identity that I took for myself. So gaining access to the setting is very important, because data collection, as we see, data collection is an automatic process. When you have the power of observation, data will automatically be generated. But the issues, if you can't ensure the primary requirements, then that will be a problem. So the golden rules are: every aspect needs to be meticulously recorded, because vital features of the setting are made visible during the access stages. Number 2 rule would be, you might be failed in accessing any particular location, but you record it, because the act of failure, the event of failureness would be as valuable as you have successful attempts of in accessing. Why this people are not taking? Why you are being rejected? So that will say more about the nature of the community that you are researching into. And another golden rule, they say that the harder it is to gain access, the more likely that the research will be rewarding once you are inside. Because it's like like an eggshell, the outer part is harder. Why? Because the inner part is very soft. So in many cases, why the people in the villages, they challenge you in the periphery when you are entering the village. They're often I think this is the same scenario in all South Asian villages, if not in other villages, that they're asking you, who are you, where are you going? These are the very common thing happen when you are entering the village. As long as you are inside the village, you're okay, and you're part of them. If you are a relative of somebody in the village, then there is no problem. So you immediately can enter to their lives, to their everyday dynamics. So these are the golden rules that we need to think of when we want to practice the access. Now, the question of identity. So these are already being discussed. I mean, identity is always a very tricky thing, because people have multiple identities. I'm a researcher when I'm in Islam, but in my workplace, I'm a teacher. In my home, I'm a father, a parent. Similarly, the person that you are interviewing, in front of you, he's a respondent. He's a very valuable respondent, a subject. In his personal life, he's a rickshaw puller. In his family life, he's also a parent. So these are multiple identities in operation, and sometimes you need to share all of your identities with your subject in order to get richer information from them. Sometimes you don't share all of them. So it depends on the nature of question that you are dealing. So your identity is really matters. So who are you? If you represent a community that people are often scared of, then definitely you'll not get rich information. So rather you try to use another true identity of yourself. Sometimes people also have prejudices against certain kind of people. When you are aware of that, definitely you should avoid those associations if you are any way associated with those kind of identities. For example, a member of police cannot be a researcher in Islam. It's very difficult because they are extremely suffered by the police in many cases. So these are the issues that actually you have to settle. And again, your identity, for example, the last point is what sort of performative identity that you choose for yourself. I would say performative identity because there are a lot of identities. We have a lot of multiple identities, but I'm going to play one identity for this particular ethnography. Is it an identity of an insider or outsider? When I did my ethnography at Korail, so since it was a slum, so what I in the early days, what I happened to do was when it was the evening, early evening, I used to leave the slum. I couldn't stay, extended period in the slum, particularly at nights. And then I found 3 girls were doing their field works in the slum long before me. And they were from German origin. They came from the Germany. And I talked to them. And when I heard that they actually stay in the slum, then I asked them, you're staying in the slum, don't you find it, insecure? They said, no, we find it secure because we had a residence in the nearby, neighborhood, which is a elite neighborhood. They said that we found that place rather more insecure than this place. So that was my lesson number 1. You are safe when you are inside the slum. But when you are at the periphery of the slum, you're probably not that safe. Because when you are in the slum, you are surrounded, you are part of the social network of people who know you, or anything happens, those people will come up, advance and tackle this. That is why these 3 German girls, they literally stayed in the slum, spent their nights in the slum. Of course, for richer data. At the same time, they found the slum more secure. So that was kind of an eye-opener for me, because our preconceived notion was the slum is the insecure place, and this notion has been shaped by many cultural elements, such as the movie like Slumdog Millionaire. If you can, if you have seen it, you'll see that slum is a happening place of a lot of evil things, right? So, as a matter of fact, this slum, which was shown in the Slumdog Millionaire movie, it was a slum of 1970s, when slum was really a happening place. But slum of today is not that happening place. It's just a residence, because now they're connected, they got IDs, they got many of the slums got formal connections. So the government in a way actually is going to or recognizing the slums. It's no longer an informal settlement these days. Some of the issues are still pending, but many of the issues are resolved. For example, basic utility services are resolved. So, I mean, I'm talking more about slum because these are the ethnographic observation I found when I was in the slum. Otherwise, when you are outside, you just borrow the term, oh, slum, informal settlement. No, that's not easy. Slum is no longer informal settlement. There are slums which are informal settlements. There are slums which are formal settlements. There are in fact 4 kinds of slums. So this, and another example that I can provide you, one university lecturer I found who resides at Karail. He's a university lecturer, now assistant professor, and teaches in the architecture department. Why he's staying in Karail? When I asked, he answered that he stayed at Karail because he's working on low-cost architecture. So Karail is a perfect site for him to test, to experiment with low-cost architecture models. At the same time, he found the neighborhood is amazing. People are more inviting, warm. So he chose this place to stay. So, as this person is, he's an amazing researcher, and he has published several articles on this, I guess. But, depending on what kind of identity are you playing? I mean, should everybody have to stay at Karail in order to research on low-cost architecture? No, you don't have to. Some can choose this while others cannot choose it. That also depends on your convenience as well. But definitely you have to choose an identity for yourself. Any question? I think Prasansa, and Progya as well. So you are concerned about these issues. So does it answer your concerns up until now?
Yes, thank you, Simon. And also I was wondering about the length of field work. Like, I know it depends from the research question, but then is there like any sort of duration for while conducting ethnographic research? And also I think there is this idea about concept of observation saturation. So I don't know if you will be covering later.
I mean,
but then,
yeah, thank you very much. So the length of observation is really depending on your research scope. So there is no golden rule for, I mean, the more you can, the better. That's of course, obviously. But as a practice, what I see in today's ethnographic practices, they often choose focused ethnography. Focused ethnography is something focused. The name actually reduces the length. So now I don't see people are doing their ethnographies for more than 1 month. For kind of researchers, the commission researchers, such as researchers which needs to be finished in 3 months, 5 months. So 1 month ethnography is one of the components. But when I think if ethnography is the main method that we are undertaking for our research, it has to be a period of 3 to 5 months. Well, again, I'm risking by saying so because I don't know what kind of research question am I dealing. That definitely will be shaped up the depth of question that I'm dealing with. But conventionally, in-depth ethnography nowadays is considered as one ranging from 3 to 5 months up to 1 year, because observation saturation is something that if you have a focused ethnography, you'll reach at observation saturation because your question is focused. Now you have a particular question and you are getting the similar observation. Now it's repeating. So you have reached a saturation point, so you stop it. But if you believe, or sorry, if you are willing to take evolved question into your research, many classical ethnographers do that. Okay, they start with one question, but they actually wait for questions to be generated. So they take the question again, and then they start observing with the new questions. So for them, the saturation doesn't work. And they spend their whole life, at one setting probably. They keep coming to the setting again and again. So, for example, there was a famous, actually it happened in all South Asian countries during 1990s, including Hamza Alawi in Pakistan, and many Nicholas Ralph, including Nicholas Ralph, and many others from India. In Bangladesh, it was Shapan Adnan and many others. In Sri Lanka, there are a lot of village researchers. So they actually there was this trend of village studies, which was done by ethnography, village study. So the question was brought to explore the socio-economic and power dynamics of a village. And when they're into it, so the questions came evolved again and again. So one phase of the study was finished during early to mid 1970s, like from 1971 to 1976-7. So in all South Asian countries. And the second set started in 1982 to 87, I guess. So the same villages were explored by the same researcher, or in some cases different researchers, to actually note down the changes, whether the power dynamics has changed, whether the financial capacity has changed, exchanges has changed. So this is a process. So if you are an ethnographer by training or by your passion, so probably you will not limit by any time frame for yourself. Rather, you will keep doing it. But if ethnography is one of the methods that you are using, then definitely you have to use it judiciously, because this is really a broad method. So we don't need to to fully, take full advantage of it, we'll use it in a kind of an executive way, so that 1 week, 2 weeks, or 1 month observation on a particular field site can be effective, because I have a question ready. So we'll do focus ethnography with a question, and I'll do this ethnographic observation, and then the rest of the process I'm coming. I hope I answered you.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, so when you are into the slum, you have your access done, gatekeepers are cooperating you. So at one point, because the initial period is a period when people keep observing you. Again, I'm talking about in terms of a classical ethnographic period, when you need probably 1 month or 2 months to make yourself familiar with the setting. But in our form of ethnography, we probably take 1 day or 2 days to make ourselves familiar with the setting. So, and then we start our observation. So what exactly we do as an ethnographer? We do everything, which means in the video you'll see that the lady who was doing the ethnographic research on Haitian citizenship, you'll see that she is doing a kind of she was participating in kind of a FGD. Probably it was spontaneously arranged, she was part of it, or probably she secretly arranged it by pushing anybody else. So you can do FGDs, you can do occasional chats. It's not interviews, just occasional chats. Just you ask a question to any of the subjects in your setting to get a clarification. But most of the times what you do, you listen, you see, and you try to connect between the variables, and you come to home and record all those. And what are you recording? So again, the question, what are people doing? What are they trying to accomplish in a particular setting? So you see people in action. So what are they trying to accomplish? And how exactly do they do this? So the method of people's doing something. How do people characterize and understand what's going on? Their opinion and their power of perception and their power of assumption on anything. So for example, mental health. So how they view mental health. So what kind of assumption? So you see probably a patient of a maternal depression in the neighborhood, and you are just you are employing an ethnographic observation around this neighborhood, and where some of your subjects are concerned about the problem with this lady. Now it is important to learn from that how do they perceive this problem? Is it a problem they perceive, or what is the assumption actually is around regarding this person's illness? Is it really portrayed as an illness, or it is something else? So these are very, you have to wait to get the answers, because you have to really be lucky to become part of this conversation where it is taking place. Or sometimes you need to ask tiny questions. In most cases, you have to hear, you have to live, you have to see. The more analytical questions that you want to get answers to are, what do I see going on here? What did I learn from these notes? Why did I include them? When you are recording, you are writing your field diary, So as an ethnographer, what do? You maintain a field diary. You don't bring the diary with in your field, but when you come back, you just immediately actually write your observations in the diary. And these observations are really important. You don't delay to write it, because it has to be written when your memories are strong and fresh, before you forget the nuanced details. So here are the 101 of field note writing. What do you do? What should you do? So as I said, write as you observe, or as soon as possible after seeing, hearing something, as soon as you exit the field. You don't write it in the field, obviously, but after the field, the first chance you get to write, you write it. Obviously, the same day. The second thing is, write copious notes of everything you have observed. The more you write, the better. So that is what Clifford Geertz called thick description. I'll come to that later. But the more you write, the better. Write as much as you can. Just give me a second. Sorry for the disruption. Okay, so it is obvious that you should complete your field notes by the end of the day. Don't leave the job for the other day, for another day, because then you will forget many things. Because you can't, as you can do it in-depth interviews or FGDs, you can record it. But for ethnography, your eyes and you yourself is the recorder. So you have to rely on your memories, fresh memories. And the first thing that you write is what did you see and hear? And the second thing is your personal reflection of what you saw and heard in the field. So that your involvement in data collection can be actually separated from the data itself, or your interpretation can be detected later, because when you will get back to this data set, probably 1 month later, so if you don't put detail of it, much part of it might seem alien to you, even though you are part of it. So you just keep detailed notes. Sometimes drawing helps a lot, because if you just draw the whole field, then it actually gives you a kind of a knowledge detail. So maybe you can draw the field and try to locate different actors in your field. In some cases, not in for big slums, probably it will not work. For a small shopping mall, it might work. So you can also use audio notes, meaning just sometimes you it happens in detective movies, you see. So people are actually recording their own voices, and then later on they transcribe it. So it's not that you are recording the setting, you're recording your own voices. If you are a good speaker by yourself, you have a good experience of monologue. Instead of writing your notes first, you just record your own voices as you are just monologuing it by yourself. So sometimes it works. So these are the ways of writing field notes, which are the outcome of ethnography. So that's the technical part of it, but the most contextual part of it, which Gears call thick descriptions. So, well, you'll write what happened, definitely, but only this kind of information might not be very helpful to understand social relations, to understand the dynamics that you are trying to explore. Rather, you provide richer details on and you spend more times in interpreting the data, whatever you have seen. So you interpret in the context. So, but in particular context, you interpret. For example, someone says that, okay, this lady has problems. She was actually she had an experience of talking over phones for a longer period, and that is why she's getting depressed. So that's one person's feeling about one patient suffering from maternal depression. You identified it maternal depression, but this is an impression by that person. You don't correct them, but when you actually take this interpretation, and this is a statement that you actually noted down, and same time you interpret it why this person is in kind of interpreting her situation in that way. What could be the reason? So putting this person in the context again, that's very important. That is how you can understand the why the perception level of any particular problem are going in that way. Why the stigma is playing this kind of a role here? Why, is there a secret patriarchy working behind? So the interpretation is very, very important. And again, you're not only taking notes of statements, rather you are capturing thoughts and emotions. Sometimes, somebody is talking to you and become emotional, eyes filled with water, and that tells you a lot of things. So you can't ignore that detail in your field note. So sometimes, you assign motivation and intentions. Sometimes you actually you see how much reach you account can be on a particular description. So it's not only the description per se. So you describe the day of you, and then you interpret the day of every activity, and then later on you find the meaning. Whether at the end, in the concluding part of the day, you try to find any nuanced answer of the broader question that you ask for your research. Is there a hint? Is there a light after the tunnel? Something that you put as a hint, because not a day's observation will give you an answer, but is there something seen at the end of the tunnel? So just take the note of it, so that at the end of your observation, when you just take a comprehensive look at it, you'll see that how it connects all all your interpretations, observations, and your critical remarks. So this is what is called thick description by Clifford Geertz, who was an anthropologist. So thick description is compared to novels, thick description is boring stuff, of course. It's not very attractive to read, but it is very useful for a research to gather its data. So I think I have few slides left. So just I'll stop here. If you have any question or concern, so I'll try to respond to that.
Can I share? I was comparing myself as I'm being a Gestalt therapist. I'm practicing Gestalt therapist as well. While you are sharing the part of ethnographer, I was comparing myself with the ethnographer. Mine is more like individual ethnographer, let's say, and the real ethnographer is in the large setting. So by observing whatever my clients talk about, whatever behavior he shows, I need to observe, and thoughts, feeling, whatever it comes during inside the room. So I was observing and regarding interpretation also, or what is feeling, what is the room, and outside the room, it is like my interpretation on that particular behavior. So I was just like comparing myself with the ethnographer, researcher. Just that's only why I want to share.
Obviously you are an ethnographer. We all are actually ethnographers. Probably we don't systematically write the field notes, but we are in our own settings, we are ethnographers because we have to observe. So I'm teaching in a university. So I observe my students. I observe the pattern of students that that's being changed over time. So these are things that actually they're very spontaneous observations that we make for ourselves. So as an ethnographer, you don't have to do anything else. So this is the thing that you are doing. So place where you are working, if it is your research field, then you don't have to do anything else, just to record your observation at the end of the day and write them as a field note when you are back home. So that will be actually that will help you. And the most remarkable ethnographies are basically ethnographies by people who are natural participants in the settings that they describe. Probably the doctor in a hospital wrote a book on an ethnography of a hospital, so on and so forth. So these are the remarkable, ethnographies when you are a complete participant in your own setting. Definitely. So nobody can know better than you when you are a complete participant. So I'm a slum dweller. I'm not a slum dweller. I spent 5 months, 10 months, whatever. I mean, I will not be able to know everything of Islam. I just give you one example. It was another slum when I was actually doing my field work. So I was taking a rickshaw. It was back in 2006, I guess. I took a rickshaw from a bus stoppage to that slum. So I asked the rickshaw puller, do you know that slum? He says, yes. Okay. So, and my research question is, how often slum dwellers use music as a form of recreation, and in what way? So this was my general question. And then I took the rickshaw and I said, are you from that slum? He says, yes, he's from that same slum. Then I thought, okay, why should I waste my time when I'm traveling? So start my questioning from the rickshaw. I said, okay, what do you think about music? Do you listen to music? He said, are you talking to me? I said, yes. Are you saying that I'm listening to music or not? I said, yes. Is it? are you insane? I said, why? I'm starving with my family. I'm just paddling rickshaws. And you say you are talking about music. You educated people have peculiar ideas about us. So it was so, I mean, I was so confused and it was so shocking for me. I thought, well, I'm probably dealing a very difficult and unrealistic research question. I should probably revise my question. And when actually I keep continuing my field work, and after 1 month, I was able to identify a room in Islam where on every Thursday night, they spend the whole night doing and performing music. So the first Thursday night when I was there, I found that rickshaw puller who was beating a drum in the music show. The same rickshaw puller who told me that I'm not sane, as I was telling him whether he listens to music or not. He himself was a music performer. But if I took his account as an interview response, then probably I would have reached to a very different conclusion. So that was the problem. You spend more time, you get richer data. So then at one point I told him, why did you lie in the beginning when I asked you? He said, well, it's not a lie. It's true for some people. I assume you as that kind of a people. Now I know that you are a different kind of people, so this is a different truth for you. That was his answer. So that is why I think, observing as a participant is very important in order to get rich data in ethnography. So when you have all the data, so the next work and the final work is basically to find pattern. So traditionally people did the notes and patterns in that way. So they are all leveling and categorizing all the informations and try to find pattern, because the ultimate objective is to reach to a grounded theory. That's the ultimate objective of ethnography. So today you don't have to use this note and pasting policy, because you have NVivo, you have Atlas TI. The softwares can do things for you. But initially, and we did this method for ourselves, so it worked really good. Even though we use software, but I still, I long for this method. This is really good because this is another way, because if you have an ethnographer team, and this teamwork is another revealing experience, because this time this interaction will also help you retrieve a lot of lost memories and interpretations as well. So this is how you actually categorize all your informations you find in an ethnographic observation. So, and actually you start coding. In this process, you start coding of certain activities. So the coding will actually get you to the grounded theory. This is the process. So sometimes you have open coding, sometimes axial coding, sometimes selective coding. So these are different kind of coding. So coding means, actually you say, for example, you're talking to people and you're collecting observations of maternal mental health in Islam, and you are often you find people are connecting this problem with excessive mobile phone use, right? So mobile phone comes as a kind of associated concept of this problem. So you do open coding. So what are the respondents, in what situations you found that this problem has been connected with mobile phone? Sometimes you found that this is being a kind of a stigma. So people are connecting because this woman, probably her family has a history of madness or something like that. So they're trying to relate her madness with that family history. So you can do axial coding for that. So you and people actually trying to give you a causal relationship, or you are trying to find a causal relationship of any action. So you do selective coding. You do two case stories. You can do in ethnography. So you collect 2-3 case stories of three patients of maternal depression, and you do a comparative analysis of that. So whatever method you use, or you can use a combination of 2 or 3 methods of these coding methods. So all these things will lead you to build a theory. Theory means, in our sense, conclusion. You will be able to answer your research question, or the question that was generated through your research. So it is actually, it is a kind of an inductive process. The theory is not given to you to test on certain variables. No, it is the variables itself that actually gives you the theory, reached you to a conclusion. So this is an inductive process. So it's like, deductive, and I guess Anna probably have covered this. Deductive and inductive process is a knowledge process. When in deductive process, what do? You have a general statement. Based on that, you draw particular conclusion. You have a general statement that, okay, mental health depression or maternal depression often is ignored by people, by their husbands, because of their lack of financial capacities, for example. So that's a general statement, and from that you come to a particular example. When you see that, okay, they do not go to a doctor because it's expensive, because they can't afford it. So the theory is proved by the particular instance that you got from the field. But contrary to that, in an ethnography, you don't have a theory earlier. You have these particular instances which will together build a theory. That is called grounded theory. So theory built from the ground. So there was no prior theory. So I think with this, okay. So that is what I told you. The grounded theory is simply the discovery of the emerging patterns in data, as I said. So when you just analyze the data, you'll see a pattern. The pattern will lead you to the theory, and it's an inductive process from particular to universal. So the generalization will take place from particular instances. You connect them and go to a general conclusion. So it's a generation of theories from the ethnographic observation. So that is the ultimate goal of an ethnography. So that concludes my lecture. Thank you for your precious time and giving me this opportunity to speak before you. And let us have a discussion. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer.
So thank you, Simone. So just two questions. I'm wondering, like, I've also written it in a chat box. So would there be a recall bias if we take notes only after the observation takes place? So like we might be only picking up few of the events or few of the things that strike us the most. So would that lead to, misinterpretation, or like would the nuances be missed? So I'm just thinking about
I
the
mean,
recall bias.
I understand your question. Yes, again, this is a fantastic question. There could be a recall bias, but when you are trained as an ethnographer, you grow this, this capacity of not missing any nuance, thing, so you are aware of, your biases. So you are aware of what attracts you the most. So again, so that is why you have to be very, very alert. And actually, and some people actually, the other slide I discussed about use your audios in a way. Some people, when they do this day-long ethnography, what they do at the halfway, they take a cup of tea somewhere and they just take this audio recorder and just record whatever they have gathered by the time. So they do it. If you rely mostly on your memories, you can wait until the day is over. Otherwise, you can do halfway of the day. But of course, there is a recall bias, and there are many controversies about ethnography that it will not give you an objective knowledge. Any qualitative data will not completely actually write off the subjectivity from it. It will have some sort of subjectiveness in the data. That's the limitation and beauty of it at the same time.
Thank you. And the other question about the grounded theory, like, when you make sense out of the data you've collected, I don't know, but in ethnography, do you share or somehow, let the respondents or the stakeholders know of what you have come up through? Would there be any dissemination or sort of like consultation in the end?
Yes, you can. I mean, that depends on the commitment that you make with your respondents or settings. If you think that, okay, your respondents should know about your conclusion, your theoretical conclusion, and they should have a comment on it, you should share. Or if you think that, okay, the abstraction that you make might not make any sense to them, then probably you will share it with the similar peer researcher group that you have, who work with the same setting, with using the same method or same setting, whatever, so you can make sure of your findings and theories with them.
So more like researchers' own decision.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question?
Yeah, just Shimon, I was just thinking, so doing in terms of the focused ethnographic approach, if one was to shadow and observe, and I'm just thinking aloud actually, and want to understand, in a couple of studies we've used, so for example, in Pakistan, we wanted to understand what the good and suboptimal practices were around early childhood development, starting from pregnancy right up to 2 years of infant's age. And we wanted to understand how communities participate, how grandmothers, how mothers-in-law, women themselves, what are the perceptions around child rearing, which were optimal or suboptimal for early childhood development, which is cognitive development, social emotional development. What we did was, we did shadowing and observation. So we placed our assessment team within the household. So they'd spend the whole day with them, shadowing and seeing, taking notes. Trying to do is this as inconspicuously as possible, but they're not invisible. They're sitting in one corner of the room or in the open courtyard in the kitchen. So is this also a form of, we called it simple, we've reported it. We called it simple shadowing and tailing somebody to try and, but I'd gather that this is a form of focused ethnography.
Well, because you did it for one day, right?
Yes, we did it with one particular household. I think the maximum days that we did spend were, I think, somewhere between 3 to 5, but nothing beyond 5 days, because that we were also concerned about respondent exhaustion.
Yeah, right.
So
yeah. I guess this is a form of focused ethnography, because you have a very specific question, and then you have set up observers in the household, and they actually came up with the question. So the difference that actually I sense here is that they use the assessment form in the setting, right?
Yeah.
So that's the difference. So in ethnography, so you don't use any pen paper in the setting. You do it when you come back.
Okay.
The other process is obviously an ethnographic process, because you have an occasional chat with, because you want to know the history of, so you have this occasional chat, you see the child rearing, and you try to retrieve information, you look at the house, its cleanliness and everything which matters, right? So doctor's prescription and everything. So it's all about, it's an ethnographic exploration, except, I mean, it's a hybrid one, I guess. I think it's effective.
Yeah, hybrid is a good word.
Yeah.
And I think in these disciplines, you borrow lots of methodologies or approaches to try and arrive at your particular questions or set of questions. But thank you for validating my suspicions that we did some form of ethnography, be it hybrid. Nadia, you wanted to, I saw you unmute the mic. Yeah.
Yes, Sam, thank you. And so, Suman, that means that the ethnographic researcher has to rely a lot on their memory, because they are not observing anything, they are not making any notes.
Yeah, unfortunately or fortunately, memory has to play a very vital role in ethnography. And I mean, it's not long-term memory, short-term memory. You have to have the capacity of retaining one-day memory in your head, because at the end of the day, you will go back home and you write all them down. Even though after that, I mean, sometimes 3 days, 5 days, or 1 month later, probably you need to go back to your earlier memories to make sense of a newer phenomenon. So memory has to play a good role there.
Maybe that is more for the young researchers and not researchers of my age, because
I mean, all the good ethnographers are of your age, I guess.
And Nadia, you're young, so one should never age at heart.
Okay, that's good thing. Thank you. Thanks.
Because I consider myself as a good ethnographer, and I'm running, I'm just around 50. So still I mean, I forgot a lot of things, but when I'm in the field, I do not forget anything. So
Yes.
I can pick up things which I can use later. So
That's excellent. Yes.
I mean, yeah, because that's the job.
Good. Thank you.
Welcome.
So I think we don't have any more questions.
I just like to share a comment on one thing. In one of the travel stories I read, the writer said he doesn't take take pictures by camera is because he feels when he takes picture by camera, he stops enjoying the scenery. Like he thinks I'm capturing the scene so I can enjoy later. But when he doesn't capture the by camera, it's because I think like if I observe more, I can write more. So probably when you take notes, you concentrate more on taking notes rather than you observe. So probably when you in some cases it may help if you observe only, you observe more rather than when you observe and take notes. Probably the idea came to my mind.
I mean, that's a fantastic idea, Nobi, because that is why when you are in the field with a lot of devices, cameras, microphones, recorders, so you rely on the devices. So you record all the things and you think, okay, sometimes disaster take place. You come home and the device did not work. The recording, it did not find the recording. In my case, sometimes it happened. So then I gave up all the devices because this is a real problem. So it's better to not to rely on devices, even on cameras. So just if you need some photographs, representative photographs, you do it sometimes later. But when you are observing, keep observing. That's the motto. So, and that's why I think your photographer was relying more on his observation because he was to enjoy most.
Prasansa is asking about consent.
Oh, consent.
No, Pragya.
Okay.
Pragya is asking about consent. Pragya,
Okay.
do you want to expand on that so that Shmun can?
Yeah, will the respondent know that they are being captured in a camera or recorder? Yeah,
No, I mean, basically you're not recording any photos or videos, or you are not using their names in your recording, in your writing. So you don't have to take any consent from anybody in ethnography. So basically, you have to have this ethical clearance from your university or institution that you are working for. So which when you do your ethical clearance, you will produce the outline of your ethnography to them and they will clear it. That's it. So since you don't have any particular respondent in your ethnography, you're just observing a lot of things. So, I mean, you can't take a consent from a tree. So that's the problem with the consent.
No, actually, this has come as a surprise to me because suppose if you decide to come and do your observation in my clinic without getting my permission, I will be upset because maybe you are publishing something which I don't agree with.
No, I mean, it's a closed setting. For closed setting, you have to rely on the gatekeeper. So, and then in that way, you are taking consent. Because if I come to your clinic, so I'll have to tell you that I'm doing an ethnography and I'm using your clinic for that. So in that way, I'm taking consent. But if it is an open, setting, a village, so who I do take the consent from?
Okay.
And of course, I'm not only observing human, I'm observing animals, I'm observing human animals relations. So these are the problems actually. But in closed settings, definitely, I told about gatekeepers. The gatekeepers will actually take the, kind of it's not a structurally consent, the permission actually from the setting. But you don't have to, as an ethnographer, you don't have to produce your consent to your, ethical body. That, okay, I have this consent papers for my ethnography. No, we don't require that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
So,
Go ahead,
sorry.
Prasansa. Yeah.
So I think when it comes to choosing the gatekeeper, I think that must be taken cautiously because, yeah, who is the gatekeeper is also the other question, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. You have to be really cautious in choosing gatekeepers. This person needs to be resourceful, patient, and not misguiding you anyway, and not be very manipulative. So these are the issues that you need to check, and of course sympathetic to your research cause. So you'll find the gatekeeper, and sometimes we call them fixer. They get people for you. So you do some, it's tricky, really tricky. Sometimes even in some settings you have to work with gatekeepers who are really bad people, not real people. But anyway, you don't have to do anything because you don't have any other option.
But I think overall, this is one methodology. The ethnographic perspective is not only interesting, but I think it's one of the difficult methods. You immerse yourself within the settings which you want to explore. It's not easy. I know this from firsthand because my wife comes from an anthropology background, and in her master's, so she had to be living for 8 months within the settings that she was observing and posing questions around. So it's a difficult methodology for the assessors to immerse themselves in. Any other questions, dear fellows? If not, we can bring the session to a close for today. Yes, Nadia?
No, I just want to say thank you to Suman. Thanks, Suman. That was a very nice presentation. And for tomorrow, I will really appreciate if everybody will be there at 8:30. And I would really appreciate if during the activities, because we will be doing some activities, if we can switch on our cameras for that particular time. And there is one activity in which people are supposed to be working in pairs. So if I don't know, I was thinking about it. So suppose if you guys have each other's WhatsApp number where you can communicate and do that activity, we need just to conduct a very, very brief interview for 5 minutes. So Prasansa, suppose if you have got Pragya's mobile number, and if Nabi can have Krishani's mobile number. I don't know whether you already have each other's numbers or not, but somehow if 2 people can communicate to each other, that will be really appreciated.
And Nadia, what we can try and do is, while you were saying this out, I was just trying to see if we can create breakout rooms. So I'll explore this with Arslan and perhaps Iram. If we can create breakout rooms, that'll be great.
Oh,
Otherwise,
so within the Zoom, there could be breakout rooms.
yes.
Okay.
So we'll explore that, and in case we can't, then we will improvise, like you were saying.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Take care, everyone. Bye from me.
Thank you, Nadia. Thanks, Moon, for a lovely presentation. And thank you, fellows, for all your engagement.
We haven't taken the photo today. We haven't taken the photo.
I think we did that yesterday, Nida. Did we capture?
Yes, I have captured the progress
Yeah,
from
right.
yesterday.
Right. Great. So see you all tomorrow. Have a lovely, peaceful rest of the afternoon and evening. So namaste, Khuda Hafiz, and see you tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Thank
See
you.
you.
Bye-bye.